right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Improve Your CMDB Health Like Never Before with GlideFast and EMMa3D. I'm Brett Carl, your host. With me, I've got Mark Harper, our Solution Sales Executive from GlideFast Consulting, Ian Pruden, founder of EMMa3D, and myself, Brett Carl, VP of Solutions and Alliances at GlideFast Consulting. Before we jump into the importance of CMDB and CMDB Health, just want to walk you through a little bit about what GlideFast offers with some of our capabilities. For those of you that don't know us, GlideFast has a collective of over 600 expert consultants that have over 3,400 ServiceNow certifications. We're a ServiceNow Elite Partner with back-to-back Customer Workflow Partner of the Year awards, over a 4.6% CSAT score, and over 2,000 successful projects that we've implemented in the ServiceNow space. We're exclusive to ServiceNow. All we do is sole source ServiceNow, and we're always here to help with any of your needs, such as SPM, SecOps, ITOM, HR, CSM, and offering different capabilities for solutions as a service with integrations, app development, remote services, training, change enablement, and even UX UI design services with our UX UI design studio. For some of our capabilities in our different practice areas, we cover IRM, GRC, CSM, ITSM, ITAM, and ITOM. And specifically for this, we're going to talk about the ITOM space and how we can help you with your CMDB health. And just a little bit more, we do have validated practices with vulnerability response, integrated risk management, and ITOM health, where we've helped over 225 customers, 416 implementations, and then have certifications across all the different applications you see here. So with GlideFast and ITOM, we are experts in the space and looking forward to it with having an educated talk about ITOM health and the EMMa3D application. And right now I want to turn over to Mark Harper and talk more about the ITOM health piece.
All right, I appreciate that, Brett, and thank you everybody for joining us for today's session. Now I know the majority of people on the call, they're excited about seeing what the EMMa3D product looks like and how that can interact from a visual overlay of CMDB and CMDB data. But I just wanted to set the stage a little bit about why this could bring value to certain organizations that can take it beyond what ServiceNow puts forward with its existing dashboards and capabilities around the CMDB space. Now, for many people on the call, I'm sure the term CMDB brings some nightmares of the past. A lot of organizations are on CMDB 2.0, 3.0, and it really comes down to some of these key reasons why a lot of CMDBs fail over the years. And from what I've seen, been working in this industry for coming up on the last 15 years, it really does focus in on this initial box here around the formality of the governance structure that goes into defining a configuration management program. And many efforts have been made, but until you actually get that buy-in from all the various different pillars, department leads, executives, that's going to buy into the configuration management program, it's very difficult to establish that level of dependability of the data set. And a lot of that comes from a challenge of being able to navigate the CMDB successfully and easily. We have a lot of people who may be recognized as a CI class owner. They may have the right mindset and have the mentality that they want to try and improve the CMDB and configuration management overall, but they get overwhelmed with being able to navigate it to the right classes that they care about, understanding what it means if they have a data certification task that's issued to them, and how they can be a part of this program overall without having to be a CMDB expert themselves. That's where I see, and hopefully you'll see it as well with the upcoming demo that we'll do with the EMMa3D product, is how you can easily see what it is that you actually care about within the CMDB, rather than the millions of different CIs that may exist that really have no alignment to your day-to-day work and what you truly, really care about. Yes, there's value in that underlying data set and those relationships that exist, whether that's driving some of the machine learning capabilities, root cause analysis, but it's very overwhelming if you just look at CMDB CI overall and able to find what it is that you care about. Now, ServiceNow as a out-of-the-box product has sufficiently made strides moving forward with the CMDB workspace, data foundations, dashboards, things that really help us with that visualization. But once you see the EMMa3D product, I think you'll start to see that it's a different game that we play in when we start having this level of overlay and understanding a CSDM compliant data set being visualized in this manner. So from what I see of the product, tie back into what we can achieve out of the box, it really helps drive that level of governance and that buy-in that comes through from the various different people that's part of the program, but not in the ServiceNow platform overall. So in terms of a CMDB challenge and a governance structure, I do see this as a net benefit for a lot of organizations to be able to get that buy-in from end users. And that leads to other areas as well, where it's coming to the automation that can be tied into the CMDB product. Obviously, we know from like a data population perspective, leveraging things like discovery is going to be the prime for any populator itself. But we also need to be able to understand where that data is being stored and also ensuring that it's got the right alignment to CSDM and the right appropriate relationships. When you start viewing it from a CSDM compliant manner, that's where you start to identify those gaps, potentially where a relationship may be represented the wrong way around, or it may also be tied back to a certain customization that may have been generated years ago that the organization may think was needed, but there's likely a more suitable out-of-the-box solution for that level of customization. That's where we see a lot of organizations that have gone their own way, whether they've come from a remedy product, a HP product many years ago, and try to build out that CMDB to fit their existing data set they were coming from. We want to take our customers on a journey that's going to get them into a CSDM compliant state, being prepared for some of the new functionalities and capabilities that CSDM 5.0 is going to bring to the table. And we believe that with certain visualizations about like we're about to see, really helps us identify where those customizations do exist and where we can start getting us back into a more out-of-the-box data model so that we can start leveraging the out-of-the-box automation outside of the CMDB itself. And then I just want to highlight just a couple of other things that we do see within the industry as it pertains to challenges with the CMDB. A lot of organizations, they see it as an opportunity to flex their technical muscle. They want to integrate with everything and anything that's out there and bring it into the CMDB without really taking a step back and thinking, okay, is there an actual use case behind this data set itself? And that's really what it is that we always kind of have as our North Star, is understanding what I'm actually going to use this data for and who's it going to bring value to. And the more people who start getting logging into the CMDB, visualizing the CMDB, leads to them consuming the CMDB. And that generates additional use cases that we can bring it further forward and start tying into other processes. We know it's quite easy to tie into change management and incident management, but as we see on the next slide, the CMDB really represents the bridge between one ServiceNow product area and another. If you really want to tell the story of zero-day vulnerabilities, you want to be able to use that CMDB tied to software asset management and being able to see where you've got that deployed version that may be able to be identified before your vulnerability scanner has completed that daily or weekly scan itself. The CMDB really does act as that bridge between one area and the other. That's why it's essential for us to have that data integrity so that we can sufficiently bridge the gap between these various different product areas. And there could be use cases as well that takes us beyond the ServiceNow platform itself. Obviously, recent weeks, there's been a lot of talk from a data fabric perspective. We still might want to be able to enrich that data set and the outcomes of that data set with what we store and residing within the CMDB itself. And you've heard this a few times, integrity of data is going to be key throughout that, getting that buy-in from the configuration item class owners or CI owners themselves. That's what's going to be vital for this to be successful over the long term. And that's what we're hoping that people are going to be able to see from today's session, where those end users, those CI class owners can be able to easily see and navigate the CMDB in a way that they've never experienced before. And I just want to go to the next slide because I have talked about a few different roles that's in place with a configuration management program. It's this first column here that we're really trying to improve upon the experience. Somebody that's in that seat as being a CI owner, we don't expect that person to be a configuration management expert. We don't expect them to be able to fully understand the CMDB itself or the ServiceNow platform. These may be a Windows Server administrator, a network administrator. They may not have the time or the desire to really learn the intricacies of a CMDB, but they have responsibility in the overall program itself. And that's what we're aiming to make their lives easier, to be able to understand what it is that they're responsible for, any of the tasks that may be associated and aligned to either their group or that individual themselves, and be able to be a part of this program where they don't have to have the expertise that a configuration manager may have, a process owner may have. Now, there's definitely value adds that come from being a configuration manager and being able to visualize the data set itself, the relationships, the hierarchy, and the taxonomy. But we still want to make it as easy as possible for people to buy in, looking at that CI owner and get them out of their spreadsheets, out of their own repositories of data, and having that centralized view that's driving the outcomes that we see that we know a CMDB can bring to the table. And with that, we're going to move forward and we're actually take a look at what this actually looks like from a product perspective, utilizing real CMDB data, but visualizing like you've never seen before.
Thanks, Mark. I think it's your hand over to me, right? Okay, so hi, everybody. Yeah, brilliant. So my name's Ian Pruden. I'm the CEO of a company called EMMa3D, and we're not ServiceNow experts, right? EMMa3D, we're a team of 3D visualization experts. All of our developers, all of our engineers come from typically either a CAD background or a gaming background. And over the last year or so, we've been teaming up with various folk from GlideFast and ServiceNow to basically try and take a new approach to visualizing or thinking about and enabling people to understand ServiceNow in a different way, right? Our view is that ServiceNow is a fantastic platform, super powerful, both in its depth and its breadth. But I guess our overall hypothesis is it can be quite complicated to look at. It can be quite complicated to understand, right? It's a complex platform, and you're going from table to table to table to dashboard, back to table, back to form, back to another form, back to another table. And it can be quite hard to kind of conceptualize and think about how all of this data that you're putting into a table or putting into a form, how is it all hanging together? And can you actually kind of make sense of your own enterprise or your own data model or the business process that you're trying to enable through all of this activity that you're doing in ServiceNow? And essentially what we've done with the help of GlideFast is we've created a three-dimensional representation of your CMDB. And it's essentially your CMDB data in live in ServiceNow, and I'll show it in a second, assessed against the quality of ServiceNow's common service data model. Okay, so there's a visualization element and there's a quality assurance element to what I'm going to show you. Okay, so I'm going to take over the screen and I will jump straight into our product. So the company is called EMMa3D. The product that we're actually showing you now is a product called, we call it See My CMDB. First of all, we are in ServiceNow. This is not this isn't fake. I'm in ServiceNow right now. All I need to do is I go to the search function. I'm just going to put in See My, and See My CMDB comes up. I'm just going to launch that now. Okay. So what we're doing right now is we're launching a new way of understanding and visualizing your CMDB. So this is a three-dimensional model of a CMDB in a test instance of ours. The domains that you see here, these are the formalized CSDM 4.0 domains, right? So the design domain, build domain, self-consume, etc., etc. And hopefully, that's fairly obvious what they are. And then, as I said, there's a quality assurance going on in the background here, right? So anything you see in red is something that, based against the CSDM data criteria, one should be concerned about. Anything that is green, it is good, and anything is amber is something you also should be concerned about, but not as much as if it's red, right? So a classic kind of RAG activity going on. And whilst this is essentially based on the CSDM, the CSDM model, and if you're familiar with the CSDM 4.0 kind of classic slide that you see on ServiceNow documentation, it kind of looks like that. This is, and you see the domains and you see the connections. There's more going on here than just a representation of CSDM, because this is now applying CSDM against a real CMDB data set. So, if I want to understand, well, why the heck is my managed technical services domain completely red? I've got 6 tables there, all of them are red. Well, I can dive in and I can now zoom into my next level of detail and I can see the 6 tables within the managed technical services domain based that are within the managed technical services domain according to CSDM, and I can begin to kind of see some more information about them. So what we see here is, let's take the servers table, for instance. What we're saying here is we're running 10 assessments are being run against a server table, and most of them are green. There's probably about 6 or so they're green. There's probably about 1 there that's amber, and we've got 3 or so that are red. So if I want to now investigate those in a bit more detail, and I want to start deep diving and essentially asking myself the question, based on the CSDM criteria, which is the data model that ServiceNow want you to use, that you should use if you're going to be able to get the most out of your instance, what is the problem with my server table? So I can now open up those assessments and I can see exactly the questions that are being asked of that server table, right? So we're asking questions about completeness. Have the required fields been completed? Are the recommended fields completed? We're asking questions about correctness, duplicate CIs, etc., etc. And I can see here that actually the reason I'm failing at the moment is because I've got duplicate CIs and I've got orphan CIs. Yeah. If I need to find out a bit more detail, I can dive in and understand the specifics of that and which records are failing. And indeed, if I needed at any stage, I can jump straight into ServiceNow. So I could jump straight into ServiceNow and I could go to the server table, and immediately I could start dealing with those data quality issues. So that's kind of in kind of a high level in terms of what we're doing. I'm just going to jump back a bit. So we can kind of take you from this view where, again, CMDB data quality is a team sport, right? You need probably 50 people across your organization to input routinely into ServiceNow, and in order to have a high quality CMDB. So you can take, that whole kind of audience of 50 odd people through from this very kind of high level, clear understanding of what's going on, all the way down to record level, if necessary, to explain to them what you need them to do in order to increase your CMDB data quality. So I'm nearly finished, but I'm just going to highlight another couple of areas, right? So we've looked at kind of going from high level, deep diving down into one particular table and seeing the CSDM criteria are tested against that table. And in total, we're running around about 314 assessments against this data, but they get run against all of the 25 tables in CSDM, and they get run, and a proportion of those 314 assessments get run against every record in the table. So if you assume there's probably 2 million CIs or records in a typical CMDB, basically we're running about 18 million checks and the answers from those checks are then kind of being dragged back to this dashboard and manifesting themselves in red, amber, or green outcomes from those 18 million assessments. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, but it's manifesting itself in this kind of hopefully kind of super intuitive, super understandable representation. There's a couple more things we can do there, right? So it's all very well looking at tables. Great, we've got an application table, we've got a server table. Yeah, but there's always a bit of a so what, yeah. Especially in my mind when I wasn't a ServiceNow expert a year ago. When I started looking at it, again, I was just struck by, man, there's a lot of tables, right? And how do they all hang together? So you'll hopefully have seen these paths that you can begin to see. What I'm going to do now, I'm just going to turn on the labeling for the paths. Okay, so I'm turning on some labeling for those paths. So we can, with that on, I can now begin to see why the tables exist, right? So let's start from business service offerings, all right? Business service offerings in CSDM terms, obviously an important element. It is why it is the services that your enterprise exists to deliver, right? So without those, there's no point turning up, right? They're the whole reason the business exists, to deliver those business services. But we can begin to see why that table is obviously important, because it's what we do. But we begin to see now the relationship between those tables, and you can begin to get a map of your enterprise. So you can see as well, yeah, if we need to deliver those business service offerings or business service offerings, which is hopefully obvious why we do need to, Well, we are dependent on these application services. And I can begin, and again, look based on real data that we're querying and we're testing in the back end, we can see how many relationships we have going from application services to business service offerings. And we can see that business service offerings depend on the application services. And then we can keep pulling on the string, right? Application services depend on applications. We can look at how many relationships in your CMDB are configured, and we can see that, yeah, in this case, we're expecting 719 relationships to move from application services to applications, and we've got 660. So not bad, but there is a bit of a gap. Yeah? But using these relationships overlaid on top of the domains and on top of the tables, we can begin to construct this kind of hopefully super intuitive view of how your enterprise actually works. What is being enabled in the sell consume space by your technical services. Yeah, what's currently in build, which will in due course feed into your technical services. What are you looking to design and deliver from a capability perspective as a business, again, which will be fed by either technical services or activity going on in build. So you can begin to see how if you get this correct, you can create this very, very super understandable metaphor for how your whole company works based on data that you already have in the enterprise, right? ServiceNow has immensely powerful, broad and deep data sets, but it's always accessible via a table that, quite frankly, you would never, ever dream of showing your boss, right? Whereas what we're trying to do with EMMa3D is give you a much, much more powerful, convincing tool in which to communicate the importance of what you're doing, the importance of CMDB data health, and why that then means something to the wider enterprise. One final thing I'll show is phase assessments. So this is kind of red, right? Lots of red. Managed technical services looks like a disaster area from what I can see right now. And all we've managed to do is get our product table complete. But maybe that's a bit harsh, right? Depends on which phase and which stage you are at in terms of your CMDB implementation. So maybe I'm not at the fly stage. Maybe I'm judging myself too harshly. So maybe I'm not even at the run stage. I could literally be just at the foundation stage where pretty much I just need to have populated the base tables with the right information, and I haven't necessarily created relationships between my base tables. So I can essentially I can raise and lower the bar of our assessments based on the service. Again, these are all ServiceNow criteria, right? The quality phase assessments can get harder as I move from foundation to crawl to walk to run to fly. So I can get a kind of fair assessment based on my level of maturity or the level of the phase at which I'm at in my implementation. So you're not always going to be looking at a sea of red. It depends on what phase you're at. You just set your phase assessment, and then you'll get your kind of equivalent set of assessments run against that data. That's probably all I've got to show you at the moment. That essentially is seeing my CMDB. Like I said, a more visual understanding of what you're doing, plus 18 million assessments going on in the background to give you a view of your real data, the health of your real data, so you can better align all of the people that are going to need to deliver for you and routinely be in CMDB and update data to make sure you've got a healthy CMDB. If you've got a healthy CMDB, you've got a fighting chance of delivering a successful implementation, because the fundamental kernel of ServiceNow's kind of data model is in place successfully for you.
I really appreciate it, Ian and Mark, and thank you for walking through everything. We did have a few questions that came through. If you guys could go ahead and address them, just depending on who is a better fit for answering this question. So what would you say the key value the customer is going to gain from EMMa3D? So we walked through visualizing the data, but what other ROI, what sort of reduction of time can be gathered by this?
Yeah, I mean, maybe if I take that one, Brett. So I mean, my view is, I think this is really about making sure you can unlock the value of your investment, right? I mean, by the time you're going to be using this, you've already made that decision to go down the ServiceNow route. You're not going to be doing CMDB in isolation. It's going to be part of a broader package of some sort of implementation of one or two or end modules. And I think the danger of those is, and the stats speak for themselves, right? There's a lot of companies that don't get the value out of their ServiceNow investment. There's modules that go unused, and really CMDB data quality unlocks the potential for getting the value out of your investment, right? If you've got poor CMDB data quality, a whole bunch of those modules that you're actually trying to implement just fundamentally won't work very well, right? So in my mind, the key value here is it's a key enabler in making sure you can get the value, get the ROI that you've promised the board ultimately.
Okay. And Mark, this might be good for you. When you're talking about assessments in CMDB, what does that actually mean from that context?
Yeah, so there's a few different things. So the nomenclature that's been used on the EMMa3D side, but realistically, we can tie it back to like any of the tasks that's associated within CMDB itself, whether it's from a deduplication, typically things you may experience within the CMDB health dashboard, where unless you are a CMDB administrator, the likelihood is you're not really looking at that. And what our objective of this is to make it more persona-based, more interactive for somebody who isn't that expert, who's going to come in and be able to see the things that they are truly responsible for, whether it is a stale record, whether it is something that's missing key attributes from a correctness or completeness perspective. That is what puts that in front of that end user. Ian, anything else you want to add from like the way that you describe like assessments from a product perspective?
Yeah, and not really, but ultimately all of the assessments we're running against that data, most of them are already in ServiceNow, right? But we've worked with GlideFast team to then add in some additional kind of value added assessments. But fundamentally, the assessments that we're running against the data are the out of the box GlideFast assessments, ServiceNow assessments, based around crawl, walk, run, the foundation crawl, walk, run, etc. Plus, a bunch that we've added from our work with you guys. And I think the key thing is you need the assessments, because obviously otherwise it's just a dumb data model. It's just a slide, right? Otherwise, without the quality coming back into the model, because it's the assessments that essentially allow you to point your focus at what you need to focus on, right? Because it's this screaming out to you: you have problems with this table. So something needs to be done, right? Because it's raging red, right? So it's essentially the articulation of the model of the data model plus the assessments, I think, which is the power. And right now in the dashboard, in existing ServiceNow dashboards, you get the assessments, but you don't get that kind of articulation of exactly where the problem therefore is.
You also don't get the satisfaction of it going from all red to all green. There's that gamification of the experience that hopefully results in more participation of people actually completing these assessments as we're going through, or tasks on the ServiceNow platform.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, if we've got it right, and we're all game designers and game devs, right? So we should be good at this, right? You should hopefully be able to get this kind of visceral understanding of your data model, right? So you should feel like you can reach out and touch it. You should feel like I could imagine. I know that if I'm in my servers table, I just need to turn and look right, and there's going to be my application services table, for instance, and you get that kind of very, very kind of visceral understanding of your data model. So yeah, I mean, time will tell. We're launching now, right? It's early days. Can't wait to see it in the hands of real users and start gathering their feedback.
That's great. No, I appreciate the response to that, Mark and Ian. We had a couple of questions about the underlying technology of EMMa3D and what the dependencies are for ServiceNow. So do you need service mapping to run the EMMa3D on top of ServiceNow? What are the dependencies you need?
Yeah, I mean, essentially you're reading CMDB tables. So you should always be trying to keep on top of the ServiceNow store app for the CI classes. But what we're basing this on right now is the core classes of CSDM and the foundational tables associated with CSDM. So you would not need service mapping for that. Obviously, service mapping, the output of a service map is an application service and its underlying infrastructure. So it could elevate what you're consuming from the EMMa3D product, but it would not be a prerequisite for using this tool.
Okay. And then for scheduled jobs, progress worker jobs, what's the impact of performance when you're running through the data collection for EMMa3D? How does that sync look? What's the performance hit or technical debt to run EMMa3D with ServiceNow?
Yeah, so it happens overnight, it's not significant from all the testing we've done, and from both with GlideFast and with ServiceNow itself. It's a very straightforward, low impact assessment that goes on.
Okay. And then the model that you currently have, is that for CSDM 4? Is it for 5? Is there a plan to migrate to the next one when we go through that process? Where do you currently have your model built out for?
Yeah, so the model right now is CSDM 4, but we developed CMDB with Mark Bodman, who's obviously the product owner for CSDM. So we're talking to him already about CSDM 5. We're beginning to work on the CSDM 5 version. We're kind of being led by Mark in terms of when he thinks we should make that available. But yeah, we're talking to him every couple of days. We're in lockstep with that CSDM 4 to 5 transition, and as soon as 5 comes out, we'll be ready with a CMDB based on CSDM 5.0. But right now, it's based on the 4.0 criteria.
And speaking of CMDB, are there other products in ServiceNow, incident or requests or anything else that this can be tied to, or any other ideas you guys are coming up with from a product perspective at EMMa3D?
Well, yes. So, like I said, I guess ultimately as a company, right, the hypothesis we are testing is that ServiceNow is an awesome platform, but there's white space in, can it be visualized most effectively, right? So we're trying to fill that white space, and our ambition is to be able to create a genuine enterprise scale meta map. So the reason the company is called EMMa3D, right, is because it stands for Enterprise Meta Map. And what we are hoping to do, module by module, is, and using ServiceNow data, is essentially be able to start creating a genuine three-dimensional representation based on live data, a true enterprise meta map of an enterprise, right? From cradle to grave, from top to bottom, end to end, front to back. And ServiceNow's got 90% of that information, right? And if it doesn't have it, you can use the various tools to bring it in from SAP or Salesforce or wherever it is. So essentially, our play is to start with CMDB, because it is the core data model from a ServiceNow perspective, and then in due course build out from there, module by module, an accurate view of the business of your enterprise that doesn't need to exist just within the ServiceNow app owner in technology, but actually is something you could put in front of the board. It's actually something that you could show a new joiner the first day they join the company. If you want to understand what you do, look at this model. Now you happen to work in a finance team in Delaware or something, but actually you can appreciate where you sit within the kind of macro perspective of the company, and you can zoom in all the way to the detail you need for your daily job, or you can zoom out and understand how the whole enterprise hangs together. So very, very long-winded answer, but 100%, right? We've got like 100 ideas of where we want to go from here. And we're going to be, and our aim is to start taking it module by module from a ServiceNow perspective. We're already talking to the operational resilience team and the GRC team in ServiceNow, and product area by product area. They're kind of getting excited about it now. We're working with Dave Wright, the Chief Innovation Officer, to kind of get on their radar. So yeah, watch this space. CMDB is the entry level module, but very quickly you're going to see other modules coming on to be able to build out that picture of your own enterprise.
That's great. Thank you for that. I think we're gonna ask one more question, and we're gonna go ahead and wrap. What about industries? So right now you're looking at CMDB and CSDM. That's going to be industry wide, right? Every industry can accompany that. When I look at EMMa3D, when I think about your offering that you have, I see airport maps, logistics operations. What sort of areas are you looking to tackle, or at least have considered use cases for to solve for this product?
Yeah, so we're kind of industry agnostic, right? But it's a really good question, because essentially what you're talking about is two different concepts of a map, right? So the map I've just shown you and that we looked at, it was essentially a logical map of a data model. So the fact that something was left or right of something, or above or below something, didn't mean anything physically. It just meant something logically. Um, but actually, if you think about, if you think about under maybe inserting at the below or to one side or above a physical map in there, we could begin to show something like, yeah, airport operations. I mean, we do a lot of work. Our biggest customer right now is Siemens, right? They use EMMa3D for visualizing factory floors and how they're going to essentially deliver complex pieces of software and operational technology for manufacturing facilities. But you're constantly you're using a map in two different ways, and we can intertwine those two different concepts of a map. We can have a physical map where, yeah, if something is left of something else on a physical map, yes, that's because that's how it actually exists in reality. Yeah, this aircraft bay is left of that aircraft bay, right? Or this milling machine is downstream of the lathe or whatever. Right? But then interspersed and overlaid and combined with that, we can then bring in these kind of logical maps, conceptual maps that can tell you a data model, right? Or they can tell you a business process. And we can, because we've got 3 dimensions to play with, we can intertwine those in a way that you don't typically see in business software, right? So we can tell we think we can tell a much richer story than you would routinely be able to tell through typical pieces of SaaS software. Right?
That's great. No, I appreciate that. We'll go ahead and wrap. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on our webinar today with GlideFast and EMMa3D. Ian, thank you for your time. Mark, thank you for your time and presenting. And we'll see you all next time. Thank you.